Here's the scene. A routine parking ticket, the kind that usually ends with a sigh and a signature. But in this courtroom, one sentence from the judge will knock the crown off an oil billionaire's daughter. And it will happen right in front of people who can barely afford the gas to get here. The morning docket in Providence moves slowly. Fluorescent lights hum, winter coats rustle. Someone coughs in the back. A delivery driver clutches a stack of citations. A grandmother smooths a wrinkled summons with work-worn hands. The room smells faintly of coffee and wet pavement. Then, the heavy door opens. She doesn't barge in. She glides, slow, measured steps, like she's arriving at a board meeting that can't start without her. A tailored cream coat drapes over her shoulders instead of being worn properly. High heels click in a calm, unhurried rhythm. Her phone hangs from 2 fingers as if it were something disposable, not a lifeline. Heads turn. No one says a word, but the air shifts. A teenager's eyebrows shoot up. The delivery driver lets out a quiet whistle under his breath. Next to him, the grandmother simply sighs, the way people do when they think, "Here we go again." The young woman barely glances at them. Her gaze sweeps the room like a scanner. Benches, flag, clerk. Then finally the bench where Judge Caprio sits. She studies him, not with curiosity, but with evaluation. How old? How serious? How important? She looks at him the way someone might look at a waiter before deciding whether to be polite. She takes her place at the rail, lips curved in the faintest hint of amusement as another case wraps up. An exhausted nurse explaining a missed payment plan, an older man apologizing for a broken taillight. She shifts her weight, checks the time on her phone, and exhales through her nose, irritated that all this ordinary life is delaying her. Her name is called. She steps to the microphone, lifting her chin, voice smooth and practiced. "Good morning, Your Honor." "Good morning," Judge Caprio answers, kindly but steady. "You are here on a citation for parking in front of a fire hydrant. How do you plead?" She lets out a soft, incredulous laugh. "It's just a hydrant," she says. "No one was using it." A murmur ripples through the benches. The judge's expression hardens, just a fraction. "Miss," he says, "in this city, fire hydrants are used when people need their lives saved. You may have heard of that." There's a low, almost embarrassed chuckle from the back. The teenager smirks. The delivery driver nods, satisfied. Color rises in her cheeks. The smile on her lips stays, but it tightens. "I was there for maybe 5 minutes," she replies quickly. "It wasn't a big deal. I had somewhere important to be." Before she can go on, the judge glances to the side. "Officer, how long was the vehicle at that location?" The officer consults a small notepad. 47 minutes, Your Honor. Ticket was issued at 32. Camera log shows the car there 15 minutes before that. Her head snaps toward him. "That can't be correct," she says, sharper now. "There's no way. My father will—" She cuts herself off, jaw clenching. The words hang in the air like smoke. Judge Caprio lifts his eyes slowly from the file. "Your father," he says, "has nothing to do with this. You're standing before the court, not his accounting department." The room goes completely still. Even the humming lights seem quieter. She swallows, fingers tightening around the phone in her hand. For the first time, the confidence looks like a costume that doesn't quite fit. The judge turns back to the papers in front of him, flipping one page, then another. His brow creases. He pauses, taps the document lightly with his pen, and raises his gaze again. "Miss," he says, voice calm, but unmistakably different now. "It appears there is something here you were hoping I wouldn't notice." He doesn't explain. The silence in the room stretches, thin and taut, as every eye fixes on her. Her lips part slightly, but no sound comes out. For a moment, she looks less like the woman who swept into the courtroom and more like someone trying to keep the ground from shifting under her feet. Judge Caprio waits, not pushing, simply giving space for whatever truth might surface. But she doesn't speak. Not yet. Instead, the narrative around her begins to form, not through speeches, but through the subtle unraveling in her posture. Shoulders that once held a flawless poise now dip a fraction lower. Her eyes dart to the side, then down, as though the file in front of the judge contains a part of her she's tried to bury. She was born into a world where oil rigs and political fundraisers mattered more than birthdays or school plays. Her father, a name whispered through boardrooms in Houston, built an empire that carved its way through Texas soil. And with every boom in the price of crude, the family's sense of invincibility grew thicker than the Gulf air. People didn't just respect them, they avoided crossing them. Her family wrote checks to campaigns, appeared at charity galas with smiles that never reached their eyes, and maintained a public image polished enough to blind anyone who looked too closely. But behind it all was a constant undertone. Her father's empire was cracking, environmental probes, lawsuits, reporters circling like hawks, no charges yet, but enough smoke to make her childhood home feel like a pressure cooker. From the moment she could walk in heels, she'd been told, "Don't let anyone talk down to you. Ever." Power wasn't suggested. It was drilled into her like scripture. That's why she walked the way she did, why she laughed at the hydrant, why she clung to her father's shadow even as it suffocated her. Growing up, vulnerability wasn't just discouraged, it was punished. If she doubted, her father reminded her of everything the world owed their family. If she cried, he reminded her how expensive weakness could become in the hands of the press. So she learned arrogance as armor, learned deflection as defense, and most of all, learned that the truth was a currency she could never spend freely. Judge Caprio studies her face. "Miss," he asks gently, "why did you tell me you were parked for 5 minutes when it was nearly an hour?" Her breath leaves her chest in a small tremor, almost imperceptible. For a moment, she looks like she might lie again, out of habit, not malice. But something in the judge's tone stops her. Something quiet. Something that isn't impressed by her last name, yet isn't hungry to humiliate her either. She chooses honesty, if only for a heartbeat. Because sometimes the truth hurts more than a ticket. It's barely above a whisper, but it's the first thing she's said all morning that sounds unpolished, unscripted. A few people in the room look at her differently, not warmer, not softer, but with a cautious curiosity. The judge turns another page from her file. "Your car was logged in restricted zones more than once," he says. "Not in this city. And not under your name." Her spine stiffens. She forces a smile. "I travel a lot. I don't always pay attention to—" He lifts a hand, stopping her. "Miss, this vehicle isn't registered to you. It belongs to a Houston intermediary company. You're aware of that?" A tiny pause, half a second, but it betrays her. She nods once, stiffly. "I had a personal appointment downtown. I was running late." The judge tilts his head. "A personal appointment?" She nods again, but her throat tightens. It's not the charity gala she'd claimed she was rushing toward. Not a brunch, not a shopping appointment. She knows that. And she knows Judge Caprio senses it. Her voice lowers. "I'd rather not discuss it." The judge's eyes soften, but he doesn't let the moment slip past. Sometimes what we avoid explains more than what we say. Her fingers curl around the edge of the podium. She looks away toward the courtroom door, toward escape. But escape isn't coming. Whatever she was rushing to that morning wasn't glamorous, wasn't social, and wasn't meant to become anyone's business. Certainly not the business of a courtroom full of strangers. And then, the moment cracks. Judge Caprio closes the folder. Not harshly, thoughtfully. "Miss," he says quietly, "this isn't the first time this particular vehicle has shown up in a place it shouldn't be. But it wasn't you behind the wheel in those earlier records. Her expression collapses into shock, the first raw emotion of the morning. "Excuse me?" she whispers. The room holds its breath as she waits for the explanation she spent months fearing and hoping would never surface. The truth is no longer at the edge of this case. It's walking straight into it. Judge Caprio lifts the file again, tapping one corner as though weighing every word before releasing it into the room. "This vehicle," he begins, "isn't registered to you. It's registered to a holding company in Houston, a company currently named in an ongoing federal inquiry." A ripple moves through the benches, not a gasp, but the collective shift of people leaning forward, sensing the air grow heavier. Her fingers tighten on the podium. "I don't have anything to do with that," she says quickly, too quickly. "I barely use that car." The judge turns the file toward her, not aggressively but undeniably. A row of printed screenshots, time-stamped photos, her behind the wheel, different days, different locations. "You were recorded driving it repeatedly over the last several weeks," he says. "Early mornings, late evenings." She freezes, lips parting in silent disbelief. I didn't realize it was that often," she mutters. "But that doesn't mean anything illegal happened." Judge Caprio's voice remains calm, the calm that makes people tell the truth or panic trying to avoid it. "I didn't say anything illegal happened," he replies. "I asked why you said you rarely used the car." She opens her mouth, closes it, opens it again. The practiced confidence she wore like perfume begins evaporating. Each hesitation exposes another fracture. It's complicated." Before she can craft another half-truth, the officer to her left clears his throat. "With respect, Your Honor," he says, "I saw her several mornings, parked near the old Jefferson building, same car, same time. She looked on edge." Her eyes flash toward him, the kind of stare that, in her world, usually makes people melt. "Not today." "Miss," Judge Caprio asks, "were you visiting someone in that building?" She shakes her head so fast it looks unintentional. "No, not exactly. I was just—" A voice cuts through the air from the back of the courtroom. "I know why she was there." The room turns. Even the judge pauses. A woman in a gray coat stands slowly, as though stepping into something she never meant to be part of. Lines on her face hint at years of long commutes and longer shifts. She clutches her purse with both hands. "Ma'am," Judge Caprio says, "if you have information relevant to this case, please come to the microphone." The oil magnate's daughter whispers, "No, please," so softly it barely exists, but the woman walks forward anyway. She takes her place at the stand, adjusts the microphone, and clears her throat. "I work in the office across from the Jefferson building," she begins. "I've seen her several times. She usually arrives before 7, always alone, always looking around like she's waiting for someone who might not show." The young woman's jaw tightens, but she doesn't interrupt. "One morning," the woman continues, "I was locking up early because of a storm. I heard her talking to someone outside. I didn't catch much, but I heard her say, 'If this goes public, my father is done.'" A tremor of whispers spreads through the courtroom like a wave. Someone exhales sharply. Someone else mutters, "Oh boy." The young woman goes pale, a shade that has nothing to do with embarrassment and everything to do with fear. Judge Caprio leans back slightly, observing her with quiet precision. "Miss," he says, "is there something you want to clarify?" Her throat bobs as she swallows, but she can't seem to form a sound. The silence stretches, heavy, unbroken, until the judge speaks again, voice lower, almost gentle. "You didn't come here to fight a parking ticket," he says. "You came here because you don't know who to trust anymore, and because you're afraid of what the truth will cost you." Her breath catches. The words strike not as accusation, but as recognition. A few people in the courtroom shift their gaze away, giving her the privacy that truth sometimes demands. She stands motionless, not defiant, not superior, but stripped of every shield she walked in with. And behind her eyes, for the first time, something unmistakable flickers. A person cornered not by the law, but by her own secrets. The courtroom waits, quietly, tensely, for the moment when her silence finally breaks. For a long stretch, she doesn't blink. Her eyes fix on a spot somewhere past the judge's shoulder, as if staring at something only she can see. A memory, a warning, a door she never meant to open. Judge Caprio doesn't press. His voice carries no force, only an honesty sharp enough to cut through whatever she's been hiding. "When you tell the truth here," he says quietly, "it won't feel good." But silence hurts longer. She inhales, a shallow breath that trembles on the way out. Her fingers unclench from the podium, then clutch it again. The room watches, motionless, not hungry for scandal, but drawn to the rare sight of someone wrestling with their own life. Finally, she speaks. "I met with a lawyer," she says, barely audible. "But not for my father, for myself." A few heads tilt, not in judgment, but surprise. She steadies her voice. "I've been planning to separate from him, legally, financially, everything. No theatrics, no sobs, just a flat, exhausted truth. My father has been using my name in his business filings for years," she continues. "Properties, vehicles, accounts, anything that could shield him if something went wrong. And the company that car is registered under, it wasn't mine. He put it in my portfolio without telling me." Murmurs stir, then fade. This isn't the spoiled heiress people imagined. This is someone who grew up as a tool in someone else's empire. She straightens a little. "I wasn't meeting an attorney to help him. I was meeting one to get away from him." Judge Caprio studies her with a new understanding. "That's why you were here early in the mornings?" She nods once, the motion sharp with shame. "He monitors my travel. If he knew I was in Rhode Island, he would have stopped me. He always does." The judge's expression shifts, not pity, but recognition of a truth he's seen in countless ordinary people. Control wears many faces. "And the statement the witness heard?" he asks. Her voice hardens, not defensive, but resolved. "If the documents in that office were released to the public, yes, my father's name would be finished, and mine along with it." The room holds its breath. Judge Caprio turns a page in her file, then another. His brow furrows. "Miss," he says slowly, "did you know the company that owned the car was dissolved last week?" She jerks upright. "What?" "The entity no longer exists," he continues. "It was legally closed. No assets, no officers, nothing." Her pulse visibly jumps in her throat. "That's impossible," she whispers. "He wouldn't—" But the sentence dies, because she knows he would. He's done worse. The judge sets the file down gently. "That means the vehicle you drove here with has no legal owner on record. Not you, not the company, not your father." A wave of tension sweeps through the courtroom. She grips the podium as if the floor tilted beneath her. "But why would he shut it down now?" she murmurs to herself. "Unless he suspected something." The realization hits her like a cold wind. "He's cleaning his tracks," she says, voice cracking. "He must have noticed I accessed the filings. He's dismantling everything I could use to break free." She lets out a shaky breath, the sound of a truth she's never dared say aloud. Judge Caprio leans forward, tone deeper, firmer. "Miss, it seems you've already chosen a path, but some choices only become real once spoken." Her eyes finally meet his. For the first time, they aren't guarded or calculating, just human and exhausted. A single tear forms, hesitates, and slips down her cheek. Not from weakness, from relief that someone finally sees the weight she's been carrying. The judge doesn't comment on it. He simply lets the silence settle, the kind that marks the moment before a life shifts. And as the courtroom watches, she stands there, breathing through the truth she can no longer outrun. She doesn't wipe the tear away. She lets it fall. The first, honest gesture she's shown all morning. When she finally speaks, her voice has none of the polish, none of the breeding, none of the arrogance that entered the courtroom with her. "I'm tired," she says. "Tired of living a life other people script for me. Tired of pretending I'm fine. Tired of wearing a name that feels heavier than the truth." No drama, no theatrics. Just a young woman stripped to her core. "I'm not here because of a parking ticket," she continues. "I'm here because this is the only room in months where no one is trying to manipulate me or protect me or use me. Just a place where I can say something out loud without it becoming a headline or a bargaining chip." Her words settle like dust over the benches, soft, but impossible to ignore. Judge Caprio listens in complete stillness, not comforting her, not giving her an easy way out, just listening, which, in her life, might be the rarest mercy she's ever been offered. Then he speaks, calm and steady. "In Providence, we have a rule," he says. "It doesn't matter who your father is. What matters is the person standing in front of me. And if you want a new life, it begins with owning the old one." She nods, not obediently, not fearfully, but with the quiet acceptance of someone finally ready to stop running. But the courtroom isn't done with her yet. The judge flips back through the file. "There's a practical matter we need to address," he says. "Because the company that owned your vehicle no longer exists, that car is in legal limbo." She stiffens. "What does that mean?" "It means," he explains, "the vehicle may be subject to impound until ownership is resolved." A few people in the courtroom whisper. The young woman doesn't flinch, not this time. "Is that all?" she asks. "If losing a car is what it costs to get my life back, then fine. Take it." But Judge Caprio isn't finished. "There's more," he says gently. "Because the vehicle was flagged multiple times in the past weeks, you could technically be held responsible for several additional violations. 4 violations, 4 separate fines, 4 more reasons to crumble." She inhales slowly and exhales even slower. "Whatever fines there are," she says, "I'll pay them. I'm not here to dodge anything, not anymore." Her certainty catches the room off guard. This isn't rebellion. It's liberation. Something softens in Judge Caprio's expression. "I don't believe you should be held responsible for citations connected to a company that failed to meet its legal obligations," he says. "Those violations are dismissed." The room goes completely silent. She blinks, not in disbelief, but in something closer to gratitude she doesn't know how to express. "But," the judge adds, lifting a finger, "the citation for today stands, not because of the law, but because of the lesson." A rustle of quiet agreement moves through the benches. She nods, almost relieved. "Understood." Judge Caprio closes the file. "Miss," he says, "you thanked me earlier for treating you like everyone else." "But I'm not treating you like everyone else. I'm treating you like a person." Her breath catches, not from pain, but from the unfamiliar feeling of being addressed without expectation or judgment. A soft sigh passes through the courtroom, the kind that comes when people witness something unexpectedly human. She steps back from the podium, shoulders lower, posture lighter. For the first time since entering the room, she looks like someone stepping into her own existence instead of her father's shadow. But as she turns toward the aisle, something in her pauses, the sense that this moment is both an ending and a beginning. And the entire room feels it. She steps into the hallway as though crossing an invisible threshold. The heavy courtroom door closes behind her with a muted thud, not a sound of finality, but of a chapter quietly sealing itself. The corridor smells faintly of old varnish and the coffee someone spilled earlier in the morning. Fluorescent lights buzz overhead. For the first time all day, her breathing evens. Her phone vibrates. She glances at the screen. Dad. The name fills the display like a warning flare. She doesn't hesitate. She presses the side button and silences the call. No guilt, no panic. Just a simple refusal. The first boundary she's drawn without fear of consequences. She turns to walk toward the exit when a presence steps beside her. It's the woman from the courtroom, the one who spoke earlier, the one who unknowingly triggered everything. The woman's expression is no longer tense or uncertain. She looks at the young woman the way someone looks at a person standing at the edge of a difficult truth. It takes courage, she says quietly, to walk away from your own blood. The young woman pauses. The words land with a weight she's not prepared for. Not an accusation, not sympathy. Something much rarer, understanding. Before she can reply, the woman offers a small, respectful nod and disappears down the hall, leaving the scent of cheap detergent and honest humanity in her wake. She stands there stunned, absorbing the sentence like a secret permission she's waited years to hear. People begin exiting the courtroom behind her. Workers, retirees, students, a mix of lives she never really looked at before today. Some glance at her on their way out. But the glances aren't sharp or curious. They carry something closer to acknowledgement, not of status, but of struggle. For the first time, she doesn't feel like an heiress being evaluated. She feels like a person among people. Inside the courtroom, Judge Caprio rises from the bench and exchanges a few words with an officer. His voice carries faintly into the hallway. Sometimes, he says, almost to himself, the biggest battles start with the smallest ticket. She turns her head, hearing it without meaning to, and something inside her steadies, as if his words place a small anchor in the chaos of her day. When she reaches the main doors leading to the street, a gust of wind pushes against them. She steps outside into the sharp, cool air of Providence. The wind tugs at her coat, lifting the edges, not symbolic, not cinematic, just real. A reminder that the world keeps moving, no matter how heavy a morning has been. Her phone vibrates again, but this time, the screen shows unknown number. She studies it, thumb hovering. Her pulse quickens, not in fear, but in anticipation. Because whatever waits on the other end isn't her father, isn't her past, isn't another chain disguised as loyalty. It might be clarity, or danger, or opportunity. She doesn't know, but it's hers to face. She lifts the phone to her ear. Hello? The voice on the other end begins to speak, calm, deliberate, unmistakably connected to the world she's trying to escape. And then, fade out. A narrator's voice, steady and inviting. What she heard in that moment, you'll discover in the next story. She lowers her phone, staring out toward the busy Providence Street where buses hiss, pedestrians cross, and the world keeps turning, unaware that her life is just pivoted. The wind rises again, brushing past her as if urging her forward, and she steps into it, no longer her father's shadow, no longer a silent accessory to someone else's empire, but a woman finally choosing her own direction.